Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. We're going to give folks maybe another minute or so here to get logged in, and we will get started here very shortly. Thanks again for being here.
Hey guys, just to chime in the meantime, as everyone is trickling in, if y'all don't mind, I believe the chat should be open for everybody. So if you're already in here and we're just waiting on a few latecomers, would love to know who's on the other side of the screen. If you guys can post your name, where you're dialing in from, it's always nice to see who is out there. And I'm not sure if the permissions are open all the way for chat. I don't
Let
know
me
if
get
we
in
can.
there and make sure that they are. I think we're showing everybody, but I may need to make an adjustment. So let's take another 60 seconds while I go do some back end checking. One moment.
Perfect.
Should we get a couple holiday carols going or something here just to kind of get people in the mood?
Yes, please, Tom, kick us off. Which one are we going to do? I'll come in with the melody or the whatever it's called in the
Yeah, I
back.
can promise you people do not want to listen to me sing or even hum or whistle.
All right, let's see. That looks.
Danielle, is your chat window not saying everyone?
It is not.
Okay,
Because I think,
here.
and do you, sorry guys. Hi, technology issues. Don't you love it? Thanks for being a part of it in the background.
Yes.
Do you have a drop down in your chat window that you can change on your end?
I have the drop down to the different people that I can click, but it's not everyone. Do you see the three dots and it gives you the option to change?
Thank you very much. That's what I needed.
Wonderful.
There we go. How
Glad,
about now?
glad I could be of assistance. Let me close it and open it. Uh, not quite. Are you able to send a chat to everyone just so maybe it opens it up,
Sure.
please? Let's see if it comes through.
Yep, I'm guessing this is the first time technology issues have ever occurred on a webinar.
I know, right?
Definitely.
Okay,
All
so it
right.
looks like they can see us and you might be able to send messages to them. I can't, but that's okay. I can chime in if anyone posts anything in there. And while we're getting all that set up, welcome everyone. Oh, it's working now. Wonderful. It's working now. Thank you, everyone that stood with us during those technical challenges. For those of you just coming in, we ask that you guys post your names and where you're calling in from on the chat, just because we can't see that on our end unless you let us know. It's nice to just have an idea of who's on the other side of the screen, and that way, who knows, maybe your buddy's on the line and you don't know until they post in the chat. Quick housekeeping items, just I know many of you have been on Tom's webinars, so welcome back. And for those of you who are new, you are in for a wonderful time. What we typically like to do is Tom likes questions. So if you have questions, comments, I will be monitoring it in the background. If questions make sense to ask in the moment, I will politely interrupt Tom and see if he can get us an answer. Otherwise, we will wait till the end. The one thing that we do request is if you have an actual question versus a comment, use that Q&A tool. It just helps us keep track of the questions so we can make sure we're checking them off as we're answering them. But if you have, stories to share, advice to share as we're going along, commentary to, give Tom kudos, whatever it is, post it in the chat. We'd like to know you guys are engaged. And thank you for being here. With that, I'll hand it over to Tom, or I think maybe the APPA team.
Yeah, yeah.
Sure. I'd
Sounds
love to make
good.
a few little intro remarks and then we'll get
Great.
everybody introduced here before we get started. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today. Welcome to today's webinar again, entitled Beyond the Basics, your step-by-step roadmap to smarter energy operations in 2026. Today's webinar is in partnership with our wonderful friends from Energy Cap. My name is Erica Baum, and I'm the Administrative Coordinator here at APPA. Just a couple of notes from us, and then we'll get things underway. We'll be posting this webinar recording to our APPA webpage under the Professional Development tab within 24 hours, as well as on APPA's Vimeo channel. This webinar does qualify you for 1 professional development hour, and credits will be automatically uploaded to your Member Compass account transcripts at appa.org. If you have any questions about how to access your Member Compass, please feel free to get a hold of me or any of our APPA staff at any time. For today's webinar, all attendees are in listen-only mode, but feel free to type any questions, as Daniela has invited you to, into the Q&A window, and feel free to use that chat for other back and forth conversation you'd like to have during our program. Daniela will moderate all of our questions today, so as she said, please send them in as they pop into your head, and we'll do our best to get those answered in real time as we go. Thanks again for being here, everyone. And at this time, it is my pleasure to turn over the floor to our presenter, Tom Diliberti of Energy Cap.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Again, I was getting a little worried about singing those holiday carols. So thanks for keeping it safe for me and for everybody else. Yeah, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Hopefully, things are beginning to wind down as you move towards the true holiday season, where you can hopefully kick back and relax a little bit. In going through today's agenda, I just want to set the stage for those of you that both attended a previous webinar and those that did not, just that you're aware of it. So today, I'm going to start today's webinar by summarizing some of the points I made in the webinar that I gave back on November the 20th. And if you're interested in getting that, if you didn't attend, just let Daniela know and she can send you the link to that. But there was a webinar that was titled EM, or Energy Management 101. So the foundations for smarter budgets and operations in 2026. Most of today's webinar, though, is going to be unpacking this energy roadmap. As I built this presentation today, I reflected on my life as an energy manager, and I thought, boy, it would have been nice when I was starting out to have some type of roadmap or some type of plan in order to understand what was coming down the road and how to sequence things. And that's what I've attempted to do here for those on the webinar, is just, if you're new to this in particular, hopefully this can provide some structure for you. And if you've been working in the energy management field for a while, really trying to drive efficiency in your buildings, what I would encourage you to do is find your place in the roadmap, think about where you fit, look at some of the things that I would encourage you to do early on, and see if you took care of all those, or maybe you got to double back and finish some things, and then hopefully you can use it to move forward. So like I say, we're going to summarize the previous webinar, really focus on this roadmap for most of the time, and then finish with some question and answers. And as Daniela has said, if questions do come up along the way, please don't hesitate. Again, for the benefit of anyone on the webinar that hasn't had a chance to join one of these webinars or meet me in person, a little bit about me. So I am a former teacher. That scares people when I tell them that I taught physics years and years ago. But I found in teaching and early in my career that I really have a passion for teaching people. And that translated into me working on the road for more than 20 years in the energy industry, teaching people about their buildings and energy management strategies. And the theme all along has been about the culture and really trying to help organizations squeeze out as much savings as they can from their buildings and from their processes in order to be as energy efficient as possible. If you're unfamiliar with us as a company, I work for Energy Cap, and I've used the Energy Cap software during this entire 20-year window of time in the career, or in this energy experience that I've had. And again, if you're unfamiliar, Energy Cap is a utility bill management software program. So if you're struggling or fumbling with managing your utility bills, Energy Cap is a solution for that. And we also have a couple other products within our core product of utility management in order to help our clients understand their data and find opportunities in their buildings. Like I do frequently in these webinars, we'd love to know why you joined us today. So what is your number one energy management concern heading into 2026? I would imagine that we all, as I kicked off a few minutes ago, we're all thinking about the holidays and trying to wind down and find time to relax. But when you come back after hopefully some downtime, what are you most concerned about as you get into 2026? Is it not enough human resources, where you just don't have enough people on your team to do what you want? Is it the increasing energy prices that are hovering over all of us, and it's going to change how we manage things? Is it building control issues? Is it you're in the middle of trying to get some energy projects finished and you're struggling to do so? Or really, is it all of these things that you're challenged by? So if you could please take a second to respond to the poll, we'd love to get some information. Interesting. A lot of respondents there. Again, I don't, Danielle or Erica, do the people on the webinar see the poll results, or do I just see them behind the scenes?
I think Erica can share.
I
But just a quick,
believe it is just the presenter.
Okay, so let me just kind of
quick
summarize.
breakdown.
So there's a few people that
Actually,
are
I'm wrong. It appears that they can all see them. Thank you
okay.
for correcting me in the chat window.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want people to just think it happened. There was no feedback on it, but you can see if you're able to look at the data that many people are concerned about all these things. I'm kind of surprised to see that fourth choice there, where people aren't really either doing the energy efficiency projects or that just is not on as high on the radar as some of the other things. But thanks for the feedback. It's just great to know what's on your mind as we move forward. So with that in mind, if we could close the poll and we'll move on to the next slide. And as promised, let me summarize this presentation that I did back on November 20th. So the theme again was just really speaking to the people in the industry that were just starting out, where people wanted to get a better understanding for how they might build an energy program or an energy efficiency initiative. And so I started just by discussing energy management itself and why it's important and all the benefits that come out of that. I took 10, 15 minutes and talked about this energy pyramid, which is shown in the bottom of the screen here. And if you're new once again and you're looking for a philosophy, you're looking for an approach, I have not found a better one than this one here. Ultimately, it takes you through a strategic way of looking at your facilities and minimizing costs and maximizing savings. And so again, if you'd like to learn more about it, check out the webinar. And then finally, I spent a lot of the time in the previous webinar just talking about each of these different categories, about how making a plan is so important and gathering information and having and establishing these really strong relationships, learning your buildings and taking action. At the end of the day, you're not going to save anything if you don't take action. And so you'll certainly hear those themes today as well as I talk about that, but I really try to unpack them in a more detail back on the 20th. And today I want to move past that. And I want to reflect on this diagram here. So in the previous webinar, this was the last slide in the webinar, and we planted that seed, hoping to invite people back to this webinar. And I just wanted to let you know, this is the core content of what we're sharing today, but we've snazzed it up a little bit by adding some color to it. And the reason we did that is referring back to my comment of a couple minutes ago, is when I was starting out myself, I really didn't have great direction. I wasn't sure what to do, and it would have benefited me to have a roadmap. It would have some type of pictorial representation or an understanding for where I was headed. And so we created this with you in mind, thinking that maybe this is something that you could print either for yourself and hang on the wall in your cubicle or your office. Maybe you make it bigger. Maybe you bring it to a meeting and share with your colleagues. I think it could be particularly helpful for an organization that's just starting out, or really energy conservation and energy awareness just have not been on anybody's radar at all. I think this lays out a really nice plan over time that people can hopefully get behind in order to move your organization in the forward direction. So this will be sent out after the webinar. It's going to show up in the form of a PDF. So please make use of that if it's helpful to you. And it's also what I'm going to be going through today. So the first thing on the list is you have to get out there and you have to assess and you have to digitize. So in this roadmap, again, as I speak to you today, think about this as if you just were starting January 1st and you're just trying to put together your plan. So these are the things that I think that you need to do right away in order for you to build your energy effort. So you need to get out there and you need to conduct energy audits. You got to learn your buildings. And so I laid this out in this idea of the who, what, where, when, and why, so we can talk to each of these different things. So who should be doing the energy audits? Well, certainly it's you very likely on the call today. If you're an energy manager, if you're in facilities, you need to be out. You need to be out in the buildings checking things out. What I think is really important, particularly if you are a person that doesn't have a lot of experience being in this role, because you might have just recently been assigned the responsibility of helping your organization become more energy efficient and you don't have much training or much experience. I ran into that a lot when I was on the road helping others out, is people were given this responsibility and they just really didn't know where to begin. And so if you're in that position and your title might be energy manager, make sure you get together with your HVAC staff and walk with them in the buildings. Let them talk about the knowledge they have in the buildings. There is a tremendous amount of information that you can learn from them. And so make use of that time with them. Ask them a lot of questions. Ask them their ideas and where the savings opportunities are. There's probably nobody in your organization that knows more about the buildings and the savings opportunities than the HVAC staff. So tap into their knowledge. The other group of people that I think you really need to invite on audits is the leadership team. It sends a very strong message if the leader of your organization, whether that title is superintendent or president or CEO, if that person spends a little bit of time in the buildings with the energy manager walking around, people will notice, and it will send a huge message to the organization how important this energy initiative is. And so position that as you build your teams and talk to your leadership, help them to understand that that's the role you need them to play. So the what part of this, like what are you doing when you're out there doing these audits? Well, you're looking for opportunities. And I'd urge you to frame all of these truly as opportunities. If you, in executing this role, focus on the negative part and you're always viewed as somebody who's going to uncover things that are viewed in a negative light, you're going to really struggle to be successful. You have to change the mindset of the people that it doesn't really matter what we've done in the past. What matters is what we do moving forward. And so you need to couch these and communicate all of these as opportunities for improvement in the future. You should be, well, walking through the buildings looking for temperature variations, find out the hot spots, the cool spots in your buildings. Maybe there's lighting issues or maybe unexplained sounds. You need to follow up on those things, take notes, document stuff, but you're just simply looking for opportunities, anything that could eventually be an energy savings opportunity in the future. The where part, where do you go? Well, mechanical rooms is a great place to start because typically mechanical rooms are where the big equipment is. And I should say, before you enter the mechanical rooms, you need to make sure you have the proper safety equipment and the proper training before doing that. So I would never encourage you to get out there and just charge into these mechanical rooms and assume that you're safe. You need to make sure you're with people that are knowledgeable. You need to make sure that you're signed up for the training courses. And when you're ready and you have confidence you can do it in the safe manner, that's when you should start to engage in the mechanical rooms. Another piece of advice or just something I learned over time, it usually takes several weeks or longer to get access to all the places that you want to go. It's amazing for big organizations how many different keys they have, how many different access codes, or things that need to be known in order for you to safely enter these places. So start that right away. Get all those keys, codes, all the access stuff, build this up over time so that hopefully after maybe losing 3-4 weeks in the beginning, you can now get everywhere that you need to be. But walk through occupied spaces, get on the roof. Really, you want to go everywhere and you want to do it at different times of the day. You really need to understand how your buildings perform when it's hot, when it's cold, when it's the weekend, when it's night, in the morning time, as they start up, as they shut down. Every scenario that's possible, you really want to be in your buildings during that time. So again, it's night, it's weekends, it's holidays, and you'd be surprised, and it's hard. It is really, really hard to spend time in your buildings on a holiday because we all look forward to relaxing and getting away when we can. But it is also a great time to understand what's really going on because typically nobody's in the buildings and you can quickly audit them. And if there are unusual sounds and things happening, you can quickly understand them. And so consider it. Again, it's certainly not something you have to do, but something that you might consider doing. And so the why part of this, well, you're there to make observations and document stuff. Another thing that gets forgotten about is you might be in a building to understand opportunities, but a second reason for being there is you're there to meet building staff. The building staff, if they know that you are present, that you're going to be there, they will take note and slowly over time, it will change their behaviors. So if they are not very energy conscious now, if they know you're going to be around all the time, they will begin to change their behaviors very subtly. And so talk to your staff, talk to them about what the costs are, what the benefits are, all the things that you're trying to achieve. The more you engage them, the more success you're going to have in the long term. So don't ignore the people part. Yes, the opportunities, the mechanical systems, those are important, but the people are super important as well. And finally, how many audits? Early on, I would say you need to spend more than half your time doing audits. So it's dozens and dozens. And even if you have a relative small number of buildings, I still think you need to be there a lot. And this even multiplies if you are in an organization with already dozens of buildings. Maybe you have 100 buildings and maybe they're spread out over a large geographical area. So you need to be smart about this, right? You need to plan your time and make sure that you are not wasting a lot of time on the road. But consider that and know if I were to give you one nugget or say one thing that's super important in the beginning, it is getting out and auditing your buildings for all the reasons that we just described. Okay, so you're out in your buildings, you're collecting this information, but now you also need to get information about your data. So these things should be happening in parallel. And you need to get all of your historical utility data. If you were to ask me the question, how much data? I would say you need 3 years of data. Most utility companies have that history of data and they will gladly export it for you and give it to you, but you need to build a relationship with those utility providers and ask for the data so that they can forward it on to you. Another important step after getting all of that utility data and identifying all the meters that you have is you got to get out in the field and find them. You need to connect physically just the building meters, that particular meter and serial number with the utility bill and note it. Because later on, months and years down the road, as you're making changes and try to control the energy use in your buildings, you really have to understand what you're controlling. And then there's no better way than just right from the get-go, just find all your meters and connect them to the bills. Something that's hard for many people is just pursuing all your building construction documents, things such as as-built or blueprints, MEP documents, code control diagrams and sequences. I just want to tell you a little bit of a story here and why I've seen this being so hard is that most organizations have buildings that are multiple decades old. And if you think back 40 years, 50 years, technology certainly wasn't the same then as it is now. And so most people have documents that are in the form of paper. They're literally paper documents that might find their way to a room in some building, or they might be in a mechanical room or in a boiler room within a building. And so my main point here is you're going to need all these documents. For the newer buildings that are electronic, yeah, let's maybe set up a database of that information, or let's find a file. Let's get an organizational strategy to get all those electronic files. But we also need to go get the paper documents if you don't have electronic documents. And because it takes time and because of what's typically the normal disorganization for a business, you just need to put this on your radar and start to work from the beginning. The third thing in this list is creating site maps. When you get to the point where you're ready to make changes to your buildings, you really need to understand how the buildings operate. So you need to either create or find maps that help you understand where your HVAC zones are. So if you turn off rooftop 7 as a for instance, you know what's going to be influenced by that, what temperatures are going to change. What does the chiller actually serve? Does it serve the entire building or does it serve just half the building? And this holds true for anything that consumes energy or water. So you got to find your irrigation zones, your rooftop locations. You need to put a lot of effort early in your program to understanding all this. And something that gets forgotten about is people don't realize is if you can understand this, very likely in the future, you're going to be explaining it to others. And so by creating what could be a colorful diagram or a complete spreadsheet of information, I was shocked through the years as I helped people how many times I brought information to a meeting that I thought was readily available by the teams of people, and people had no clue what the information was, and they were very grateful for the information that I brought. Does it directly affect energy consumption? Not necessarily, but I think the mindset is you have to contribute to your organization in any way you can by adding value, because if you build friendships and strong relationships, other people will help you in the effort to save energy. The fourth thing here is documenting current status of the control systems and how things are performing. If you're fortunate enough to work in a system that has a lot of building automation, where you can go to the automation system and with the right cues, you can run a report and document exactly how the systems are running. And the things I'm looking at here are set points and airflows, lockout temperatures, boiler control settings, really whatever you can get your hands on. You just want to understand how the system is set. Because when you try to make changes weeks, months, or years down the road, if things don't go well, you need to understand how to return it back to what it was when you found it. And it also, in documenting all this, and as you learn more, you'll uncover opportunities. It's almost inevitable. You're going to find more and more opportunities to save. So put some effort into that early on to just get into your system. Again, if you're new to this, work with your HVAC guys or your controls tech. They can show you the easiest ways to document this, but spend some time yourself, get into the system, navigate around, do it as a view only type of thing. We certainly don't want you to mess anything up by clicking on things that you shouldn't, but you have to learn. You have to give yourself the ability to really understand all of this information. Last item on here is conducting a tariff analysis. And I just want to give you a mindset of what I've gone through and what I've seen that's so important is the tariff analysis usually generates savings opportunities. So as you understand your electric bills and you seek new tariffs, or there's the potential for new tariffs, the thing that gets overlooked though is that people don't realize this drives a tremendous amount of learning. So even though you might in your own mind say, you know what, I know I should probably do that, but I'm so busy with these other things, I'm going to de-emphasize that and push that back. And what I'm asking you to do is reconsider. When you dig into your rate tariffs, it forces you to deal with your utility provider. It forces you to understand better what's happening in the buildings, and it's going to drive your learning. And it has the benefit of saving money earlier rather than later. So consider that as you're trying to establish all this baseline data. The next thing on the list is deploying your IoT sensors and getting some real-time dashboards. The idea that I have here is that I think this is the future. We're all going to be dealing with this in the future. And my instincts are on the call today that there are many people probably that don't have a lot of these things currently in their buildings. But well, I guess what I'm saying to everybody is it's going to happen. This is going to be the way that energy management is done in the future. And because I anticipate there's going to take a bunch of lead time in order to get this done, you need to start planning earlier rather than later. So in addition to building the relationships and getting the data, you also need to start to understand the real-time meter data that you've got available to you, understand the current conditions that are in your buildings. Again, it's back to auditing the buildings. It's being out there and understanding, do you have 3 of these meters? Do you have 300 of these meters? Are the meters all from the same vendor? Are they from different vendors? My graphic over here to the right just shows a bunch of different companies. I have no bias here, no suggestion to use one vendor over another. And my advice initially is just, you got to find out what you got. I'd also say it's time to find a good business partner because let's suppose you don't have a lot of this out there. You have very few meters out in your buildings. And again, the purpose of these meters is to pull information that eventually is going to be critically important to driving down your loads and managing your facilities. So get a good partner, invite some people in and talk to them so you can find out what products best fit your organization. Another idea here in terms of focusing your efforts, since you just can't do it all, you're going to be limited both by money and time. I live by the 80-20 rule. And what I mean by this is typically 20% of an organization's buildings use 80% of the energy. That's certainly not going to be true of all, but it's true for many, that there's just there are a few whopper buildings out there that consume an awful lot of energy. And that's where you want to start. You want to get these meters out and plan solutions in these buildings because it's going to have the biggest, fastest effect on your bottom line the soonest. You're also going to have to coordinate now with your finance team for funding. They're going to want the rationale, like why should we be spending money on this? So you need to get the information. You need to make some graphs and charts. Again, I gave some thoughts on sitemaps a minute ago. Find all these meters, show where they are in the building, show how much we're spending in the buildings. The finance team usually is slow to come on board, but if you do your homework and you make it logical and help them to arrive at the same conclusion you can get them there. It's just going to take time. And also talk to your electrical provider to see what they can provide. I've said a number of times how I've worked all around the country with many different utility companies, and some utility companies have this real-time data already available. It might be not real-time in the sense that it's not to the minute. It might be 15 minutes delayed, or it might be 24 hours delayed. Nonetheless, it's data that's good to have. And so if you've already got access to some of this data, it might delay this. Maybe you don't want to invest in these meters right away. Find out what you got and then put a plan together based on what you've got. Back to the theme of developing and training your team. I wanted to give you some insight on how important I think this is. If you notice in the white boxes going across this slide, I've listed the common teams that you'd have within an organization. There certainly are others, but this just gives you a flavor, and I think you'll see the logic. You have your facilities team, your executive management or leadership team, finance team, the IT teams. All of these teams are working to help your organization be successful. And typically, everybody works in silos and people don't communicate real well. And so that creates the problem. And so the energy manager in your efforts can help bring people together. And I wanted to give you some ideas how each of these groups of people can help you. So at the bottom of the slide, just working with facilities here. So facilities can help by improving calming light or common space lighting and HVAC control. And let me give you a little more context, a little bit more background. Many times, if you work in an organization where you have an employee that's in a space that is his or her own, where they're there every single day, they can be coached and taught and urged in order to manage their computer, manage their light, to do things to manage the energy consumption in that space, but they become reliable because they're there every single day. The problem is the spaces that are common spaces, hallway spaces or auditorium spaces, shared spaces, nobody owns those, conference rooms. And so what you want to do is work with your custodians and your facilities team to put strategies in place for controlling those spaces because typically they get ignored. And there's good opportunity there usually to save energy. What you'll also get from your facilities team is they're going to give you great feedback, that institutional knowledge, which I mentioned a few minutes ago, where they're going to know more than anybody else about your facilities. So you want to tap into that. And you want to work collaboratively with this group of people. They need to see that you're on their side, really trying to help them as they do their jobs. Now you might say, why the executive leadership team? Well, what do we need from them? Well, I mentioned they need to come in these audits. They, more than anything, need to support your energy reduction efforts. They need to use their authority and set an expectation within your organization. This is reasonable, this is important, and this benefits our organization for the reasons that they described. So convince them that's got to be part of the process. And just patiently work with them. And I think eventually they come around. Finance team, one of the things that's a real critical point here is I want to urge you to invite your finance team to join you on audits. It's very powerful and it's very easy for the finance team to ignore some of your suggestions or not allocate money to solve some of these problems if they don't know what the problems are and they haven't laid eyes on them. If you can get your CFO to walk with you through a building and see the things you see, and it becomes so obvious, it's just silly that the problem is not repaired or not fixed, it really helps you to move the organization to where it needs to be. So invite them along and take them to the worst things so they can appreciate better what you're seeing. I want you also to be honest with them too and tell them, that not all solutions are going to have a great ROI. It's just the reality of it is. But if we never solve the problem, it's always going to hurt the bottom line. At some point, we have to confront this. And why wait for 5 years if we can confront it now? Because if we don't solve the problem for 5 years, it's simply just going to be a cost that we could hopefully avoid. And prioritize the long-term solutions. So have some short-term solutions in place and some ideas, but really prioritize the long-term solutions at this point in the implementation, because there's a lot of things you have yet to learn and a lot of things you'll uncover. And so take the short-term wins and keep thinking about the long-term benefits. And finally, the IT team. What I'd urge you to do here is talk to them about different management strategies. It's not uncommon to walk into a meeting with the IT professionals and they right away are very apprehensive about energy conservation strategies. My advice to you is to listen to their concerns. And I think the way to bridge the gap is to do pilots. I would not for a second suggest you turn all your computers off or do anything really radical with the way technology is managed in the organization. But many times there are things that can be done. And the way to ease into that transition is by doing pilots. So use a building or use a type of computer, use a printer, look at all the different options, tie in your observations from the buildings in order to help people understand better what you're seeing and also what the opportunities are. Wanted to throw out something here for the first time is a Tom tip. I've got this idea that I've encountered some things through the years that I think are really important in terms of the mindset that people need to have as they're walking through the buildings. And I have to give credit. I was on a webinar the other day where the speaker in the webinar used this idea. He said that corporations or businesses have inertia. And the logic they use, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I stopped to think about that and I said, that's really true. That is the mindset that we have as human beings. Because as human beings, change is hard. We don't volunteer for change typically. We fight change. And so I just thought about it and I thought, you know what, there's other proverbs that say the same thing, like leave well enough alone, right? Isn't that a mindset that people have? Like, just leave well enough alone, it's fine. Or don't reinvent the wheel, like it's working. Or better the devil a detail you know than the one you don't. So all of these, in my mind, capture the essence of what happens with human beings, where we don't volunteer change. And why I bring that up and why I think it's important is that is the mindset that you're walking into, and that is what you have to counter. And you have to be understanding and empathetic to it. But if you start here and you approach it that way, I think you can be successful. If you get angry by this and frustrated by this, you're doomed to have a very difficult time down this path. So keep that in mind, give that some thought. Another really vital piece in this process early on is the organization has to make a commitment to regular meetings. If your leaders and your business officials, if they are dismissing this and they're not willing to allocate some time and effort to meeting with the group, again, you're going to have a really, really hard time. I would urge you to push for weekly meetings would be better. And you don't need an entire meeting like an hour. What I would urge you to do is take a pre-existing meeting and maybe try to carve out 5 minutes where you can talk about the issues where people are already sitting around the table. But this is a really important step because it sends a message to the organization how committed they are to improvement. I think this is the last slide in that first blue window at the top of the roadmap. So summarizing in this, what I'm suggesting is all of this has got to be done early on in the first 6 months, maybe 9 months of your work effort. But it's beginning to integrate the data. So as you get your utility data, you need to put it someplace. Again, that's where Energy Cap could help you if you're looking for a solution where all this data can go to be organized and understood. But you're looking at energy use intensity. You're looking at all of the unusual things that are happening in your buildings. You want to compare to Energy Star data or CPEX data. So you really have to benchmark and understand where the opportunities are. And another Tom tip here that I want to point out is this idea. I have, in working with people, urged them to cautiously move forward and not be overly aggressive. And you might say, well, Tom, why would you do that? Why not just kind of start turning things off you can in order to save money? The reason I advise that is because sometimes you assume there's a problem there. You make an observation or you go through 2 different buildings and you see something, you say, oh, let's do this. And all of a sudden it's going to create savings. And my advice is to understand the true nature of the problem before you attempt to solve the problem. So let's say it's about lighting, just as a for instance. Go to several buildings and check out the lighting systems. Maybe there's a control system that exists in a couple, and you begin to assume that the control system exists across many, and you propose a solution by changing some settings on the control system, and then you learn, well, most of the other buildings don't have that system to begin with. What I want you to consider in this case is your credibility. If you start to propose solutions that aren't credible, it erodes your own credibility. So consider that. Just again, understand the problem before you attempt to solve it. So now we're transitioning in the roadmap further down. So now we're thinking at the end of the first year is what I'm suggesting now is now you have to kind of switch your efforts. And you also have to recognize what you know and what you don't know. It might make the most sense at this point to take an HVAC basics course because you don't understand the acronyms. You don't truly understand the HVAC and how it works. So you've got to make sure you train yourself, get the support you need, because when you're part of the conversations with your HVAC team and others, you need to be able to speak the lingo. So invest in yourself because this will help you further down the road. And it's a common theme you keep hearing me saying, but we have to just continue to document information just over and over again. We have to keep capturing that information. I also think this is a window of time when it's important to start to investigate and implement new technologies. So again, in a context here, we are roughly a year into the implementation of this energy effort. You've learned a bunch of stuff, but now it's time for you to start to implement change. And what I would say is it's going to be very difficult because you're going to be busy to know about all the latest information and technologies that are in the market. So you have to set time aside and learn about it. You've got to invite in good business partners. I learned this nugget of information from somebody I work with over time. He was a facility director, and he expressed frustration to me about all the calls and all the emails he'd get from business partners and like, how do I manage all of that? And I said, you know what, let's talk about that. And he gave me this idea. What he did to make his life a little bit easier is he knows that he needs to learn. He knows he needs good business partners to work alongside. And he chose to proactively schedule it in a way that worked in his schedule. For him, he would schedule a day or a window of time, a 2-3 hour window of time every couple weeks. And that would be the window of time he would meet with all of his business partners. So he could mentally be in the right mind space to have those good conversations, to learn, to do what was right for his facilities. And I offer that to you if you don't have a plan in place, because I know it's challenging. I mean, I am a business partner and I know we overwhelm people at times. It's part of the game, but I'd also say, let's work together. Let's set some time aside because you need us, we need you. Let's work in coordination to try to make this better for both sides. Last couple of bullet points here is why I'm saying you need to get out there and learn is I don't think any of us can really predict what the technologies are going to be like a year from now. There are going to be AI-driven HVAC and lighting control solutions that exist 12 months from now that aren't currently in the market. You're going to have to go and do your homework at that time and implement what you've got. Another thing that's beginning to be more common is this predictive analytics and digital twins. So just if you're not familiar with the lingo or know what it is, you might begin to spend some time learning about that. This is also the window of time when I think you got to start to plan some efficiency projects. And I would say start with the easy stuff, lighting and mechanical. Consider ROI, but don't disregard the obvious solutions. Back to this idea of focus on the things you can get done quickly and easily, and make sure you're finding a way to measure performance. Take advantage of rebates and the utility incentives. Another huge question that's hanging out there too is this bullet point about, is your organization ready for electrification? When you're ready to truly plan these projects, you have to answer that question. And we have to also understand what the market is, because there are many, myself included, who are concerned with the direction of the electrical grid and its ability to keep up with the growth. As organizations are moving to heat pumps, and there's more and more challenges with the grid and solar and battery storage, you need to take stock in the current circumstances in order to plan your projects around that. A bulleted point here, the second from the bottom, it says complete obvious resiliency and renewable projects, but hold off on the big ones. You might say, Tom, why? Why not take advantage of those? This is back to that energy pyramid that I introduced the last webinar. And it's this idea that if you charge into these projects, it's possible you will be overspending, spending more capital money than you need to, because these projects will be oversized. So make sure you plan it into your sequence at the time that minimizes cost and maximizes savings. So here we are now further down the road. Again, we want to continue to train our teams. We want to make sure that our teams are getting all the support they need. I learned something in going through with many organizations and many people, having conversations and having a couple people let their guard down to talk to me about what their concern was. And it was this. Again, this is another one of these things that I think is important, is somebody along the way told me that, people won't do things for two reasons. It usually falls into two buckets. If people are asked to do something, they won't do it because they either don't have the motivation or they don't have the knowledge in order to do it correctly. So it stalls their efforts. Now, the first one is hard. If you are dealing with employees, people as part of your process who lack motivation, it's a challenge. I have no magic wand there, but it's good to identify that so your tactic and your solutions might be different. The other thing, though, is solvable. If people don't have the knowledge and the training they need to do their jobs well, then we need to supply that. And so my pearl of wisdom here, or my thought is, you need to diagnose that. If you have people in your organization, talk with them. Hopefully they will let their guard down, tell you how they're feeling. They'll open up to you so that you can support them. But this is on you. You have to train your teams and diagnose this to support them. But be transparent. Use dashboards. Adjust your methods to reflect your culture. You might be working in an organization where the way organization is communicated is through email, or maybe it's Teams channels, or maybe there's a newsletter that goes out. Make sure you're adjusting the way you communicate with your teams to match how your organization does business. As you're communicating with people, make sure you're effectively communicating your ROI. And stating the obvious here, make sure you know your audience. If you got energy engineers or facility managers, finance leaders, sustainability officers, they all have different things they care about. So provide the information that's most relevant to them. With energy engineers, it's the data. They want to see percentages. They want to see graphs, charts, spreadsheets. Facility managers want to keep people comfortable and safe. They want to make sure there's no downtime or there's no risk to the occupants. Finance leaders, they care about the bottom line. So you got to be supplied with that information. And sustainability officers typically are looking for good news to share, right? They're part of the team in the organization that's trying to communicate out to others about the success. And so they're looking for good information. So what you really need is one core ROI story with 4 tailored versions. So the math doesn't change, just how you tell the story. So think about that. And the graph here, this is a graph of cost avoidance. If you're new to this arena or you haven't heard of cost avoidance, please let us know, because we want to teach you about this. But this is a graphic or a description for how to measure using baseline data the performance of an event so you can talk about its success or its failure. That should be part of your ROI calculation, part of what's shared. One of the things I did while being out in the field is I work with a lot of energy managers, and I used to challenge them with this. Is I said there's really no excuse for not building the knowledge about your buildings that you should be able to talk intelligently about anything that's going on. So my comment was this: you might not be able to solve a problem, but you need to be able to explain it. And I think this is an important mindset because of many people that do the job that we do. They're overwhelmed with the options and the systems and the people, and there's a lot of moving parts. And I think what you really have to hold yourself to the standard to is understanding it all. So when you're in meetings and you're confronted with a question or a comment, and somebody says, "Hey, why is this, that, or the other thing true?" You can talk intelligently about it. Again, if you're able to do that, it builds your credibility and it will continue to move things along. So you don't have to fix everything, and you don't always have to suggest that you know everything, but you do have to do the homework on it and do the best you can in explaining what's going on so others can appreciate it. And many times, what happens in doing this is people understand your world better and they're more likely to help you solve problems. So last couple slides here are this idea. So now we're year and a half, we're 2 years into implementing this. Now it's time to try to get some more money. Okay, we've started to change load. We've changed the way systems are set. But now what we want to do is take advantage of that real-time data that we talked about a half hour ago in this webinar. So you took the time early on to get the meters installed. Now you want to understand all of that meter data. So you want to look for good business partners again. You want to work with some demand response programs and companies that can help you capture that savings, focus on the load reductions, and also look at other renewable projects. This is the time. Now you're well enough in, you have enough data, enough understanding, you've trimmed out some of the waste, you've changed your culture, you've implemented energy conservation. Now it's time to look at the photovoltaic or the battery storage systems. I have a slide here too. If you haven't seen a picture of a virtual power plant, I just saw this online and I threw it in because you start to hear this lingo, this VPP, and you start to think you know what it is, but this is a good representation. So this is certainly something that's going to be more on your radar over time. And just briefly, over to the left-hand side, you have all these other sources of electricity, and it's flowing to your buildings through distribution systems. VPP is this idea of having a control system in place that can manage all of the energy as it's going to your commercial, your residential, your industrial buildings. If you haven't stopped to think about this, consider the load pattern for a commercial building versus a residential building. Think about this: commercial buildings, if it's a 9 to 5 type of building, might have huge loads during the day and less loads at night. Residential might be the other way around. People are going to work, so their loads increase. So the idea of a VPP is taking the flows and managing the production of energy so there's a benefit for the entire group of organizations. So again, hopefully that was helpful for those of you that just haven't had a lot of exposure to it yet. Another thing that's becoming more common is this idea of cogeneration. So in addition to doing solar and battery storage, depending upon the organization you are, CHP is becoming more common because people want to become more resilient, protect their organization during periods when the grid might be failing or there might be severe weather. And so when the time comes, and what I'm saying is you can't worry about that right away. A couple years down the road, you should learn about that and see if it makes sense for your organization. And this, as we kind of come to the conclusion here, is this idea of the renewables. I've been a broken record in my webinars that I really strongly support renewable energy, but I just think the timing is just so critical. And it's knowing when is the time to look at resiliency. Resiliency is going to have a cost. And what I mean by that, it's going to typically be a very significant capital cost. And I don't think you want to incur that in the beginning because I don't think you're ready. So take a look at your needs a couple years in. Look at your resiliency. What does your organization need? Look at PPAs, look at the RECs, see if there's other ways to recover money and to manage your facilities. Because typically, this is the time when you have enough good data and can make really good decisions to really improve your overall efficiency. So that takes us to the end of the content in the webinar. And I had a couple poll questions as we finish up here, and then I'd like to finish with some questions and answers. And one of the things is we at Energy Cap really want to give people a chance to tell their story. Daniela early on invited people in the chat today or in the Q&A, just kind of share more about who they are. And so if you're interested in being a panelist for one of our webinars, I would love to get a handful of people that would like to tell their story and their successes and share, because I certainly in no way, shape, or form know all the information. I feel like I've learned a few things along the way, but I want to pull more people in and be the conduit to help others learn from others. And so if you'd be interested in being a panelist, please let us know. And we're happy to reach out to you and see if we can find something that works into your schedule. And if it's not your thing, totally respect that, but figure it didn't hurt to ask.
Yeah, and I did just post in the chat. We've had a quiet crowd, but of course, people have stuck around and listened to all the content, which is great to see. And yeah, even if you are a wallflower, you can be a wallflower that chimes in chat every now and then. So maybe work up to webinar panelist. But we just like hearing from you guys. Like Tom said, he knows a lot, but he doesn't know everything, shockingly. So if you change your mind, you can always reach out to us and we'd love to share your story. And then I think we have one more poll, right?
Yeah, actually two more, I think.
Perfect.
So next one was this, is if anybody in listening to the call today would like to learn more about our product, so maybe you're intrigued a little bit. There were some screenshots of Energy Gap, our software. And if you're unfamiliar with who we are and what we do, and just you're kind of intrigued, you'd like to learn a little bit more, please let us help you out. We're happy to engage and do a demo or whatever you need to understand. But ultimately, the message here is that Energy Cap supports all of these initiatives that I've been speaking about today. Really becomes the foundation of how to keep all your data consolidated, organized, brings clarity from all the chaos.
Yeah, and I will say, in looking at the names of some of the participants that posted in the chat, we do have several customers that are on the call. I know the APPA community is a pretty tight one, so more than likely, if you ask your neighbor or someone that you're connected to in that group, you can probably find a customer that can share their experience with you. So whether you want to hear from us or, a third party, it's good to ask about it.
Okay, good stuff. And I'm going to switch to the next one then. Okay, and so the last question is just wanted to let you know about, hopefully, again, we're all able to take some downtime in the next few weeks as we move towards the holiday season. But the next webinar that we have scheduled is we want to talk more about that foundational data layer. So we have, and this is not through APPA, but this is through Energy Cap. And so if you'd like to participate in another webinar or learn some more information, please just know that it's out there scheduled for January 14th.
And then I will say with that, I know, Tom, you're working on the official topics of how it's going to roll out, but this is essentially one part of the series that we're going to keep hosting through 2026, which ultimately is supposed to be kind of a guide through that chart that Tom shared at the beginning and recommended printing out. So follow along, get in with the group, and we'd love to see you guys there.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we are to the Q&A.
We are indeed. And we had a few questions come in through the Q&A tool. And you guys, we've got 7 more minutes. So if there's anyone that came up with anything last minute, feel free to post your questions in there. But one of them, Tom, that came in, and I think this kind of ties to the understand the problem before you attempt to solve it, is, well, a few of these tie into that. But one of them is, what's the right balance of mechanical solutions versus people solutions for an organization?
Ooh, that's a good one, because I think it's hard. Like that really gets to the meat and potatoes of what an energy manager has to decide. And I guess my advice with this is going to be different for every organization. You might come from an organization that has a lot of technology, where there's a lot of functioning systems, and technology is maybe less the issue, but maybe it's how that technology is being operated. So I think you just have to do your homework. You have to diagnose what you've got. But I guess what I want to emphasize, what I feel like I'm always emphasizing, is you can't disregard the culture. Don't assume that people know what to do and how to do it. They need to be coached, they need to be trained, they need to be urged to follow some simple strategies and ideas. So make sure you emphasize energy conservation, energy culture first, and then I think that informs how you can better move forward with the mechanical and on the people side.
Great. And another one, and I know you had a slide on this, but I'm sure you could probably go on for days about it. But how can I slow down my organization from wanting to jump into renewable energy projects?
Yeah. You know what? I think you gotta teach them. I mean, at the end of the day, I work from the mindset that if I've come to this conclusion, I like to think of myself as being fairly logical and reasonable. And if I've come to this conclusion that this is the right thing to do, to me, why wouldn't somebody else come to that same conclusion if given similar information? So I frame it this way is that if people have similar information, many times people come to the same conclusion. People come to different conclusions when they have different information. And so I think the teaching thing there is get everybody on the same page. It's back to the theme, what I spoke in the beginning about getting the documents, building these site maps, get a true understanding of what's happening, share that with people. And I think that's your best shot at having people come down on the same side and then truly have a plan to move forward in a cohesive and comprehensive way.
Yeah, and speaking of information, obviously many of us know the more information we have, the better. And so one of the questions that came in was about interval data. How important is interval data to the overall success of an efficiency effort?
Yeah, again, great question is I would say in the short term, um, is it important? Sure, but it's not going to be nearly as important as what it will be a year from now. As all of these systems change and get more sophisticated, having that data is just going to be so, so critical. And that's why I tried to stress early on about understanding your buildings, understanding your real-time meter data situations so that you really can put together a plan that makes sense. Because again, even though it's important now, who knows what the number is going to be 10 times more important a year from now, 2 years from now. It's just going to be dramatically more important because of all the systems and the technologies and the AI that's going to be available to manage things if that data is flowing through it. And so what I would say is you have to sooner rather than later is emphasize that in your work effort because it's just going to get more and more important.
Awesome. Um, I guess one of the things that I would say, since we have a few more minutes, I think those are all the questions that I'm seeing, but are there any other Tom tips that you would have, particularly for those resistant folks? And I know that's kind of what you've been talking about throughout the entire webinar, and it's always recommendations that you sprinkle throughout, but maybe there's just one, those little nuggets that you like to share, would be helpful.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind that I don't think I've said yet today is you want to position this in your organization. When I say you as the person, as the energy meter, want to position the overall energy effort is being driven by data. You don't want to be the person who's the bad guy. There's very likely many people on the call today, if they've been doing this for a while, have been called the energy Nazi. Okay, is what I hear out there all the time is that people accuse others of doing these things for all the wrong reasons. And I want to urge you to be careful about that. What you want to do is make the data the bad guy. So collect the data, get the graphs, the charts, the transparency, maybe it's dashboards, because it's hard for people to argue against efficiency. And it's hard to argue against data that's crystal clear that it just doesn't make any sense to keep going down the path that we are now. They might not like you for whatever reason, but don't make it about you. Don't make it personal. Make it about the data. The data is what's telling the story. And so if you ever get disenchanted or frustrated just because like, oh, I feel like I'm fighting this uphill battle, just pause for a second and say, I got to do a better job with the data. The data is what needs to drive the change.
Yeah, and I think actually that was not planned, but it's a perfect segue into reminding y'all about the webinar we have coming up in January about laying the data foundation. And so I think, if you didn't post in the chat that you or the poll that you wanted to attend, you guys can always find our future webinars on our website under the resources section. But yeah, I think, I don't like being the bad guy on my team when it comes to anything encouraging for others. And so I think that's great words of advice, Tom. The data can be the bad guy. I like it.
Yeah. Amen.
And eventually, hopefully it can be the good guy telling the story of the wins.
Yeah, what I think the other part of this message is for the energy manager, the person managing this information, is they've got to find the right graph or chart or spreadsheet to make the data understandable. Because again, if people don't understand the data, they can't come to the same conclusion. So don't be stuck in your own mind in terms of what you think the right way is. Talk to people and ask for clarity so that you can display it in ways that make sense to them. Again, it's just a core theme to all of this is you have to really understand the people so you can give them actionable stuff.
Cool. And then we did have Bruce commented in here. Can you elaborate on HVAC IA really quick? I know we have 1 minute, but
HVAC/IA indoor
did
air quality, is that
I think maybe Bruce, if you can give us a little bit more on that, might be helpful to answer the question.
or maybe he mistyped. It was
AI,
AI.
AI.
Yeah,
That's what I thought too. I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know.
That's what I'm thinking. So just a quick little nugget is I think it's at its formative stage. I think just with limited time, and again, I don't know much about this other than I really believe this strongly is that this technology is changing so fast. And if you are an organization that's on a tighter budget and you don't have access to a lot of money, I do not urge you to be on the cutting edge of AI technology. I think you have to recognize who you are, let some of these generations of equipment come through, and maybe you jump on in generation number three. Because if money is tight, if you try to be on the leading edge, you're more likely to spend money that you just don't get the value from. So I think that's the main thing is it's going to play itself out over time. Let it play itself out, but think about who you are and how it fits into how it should play out for your organization specifically.
Awesome. Well, I think that's perfect timing. We're at the top of the hour. APPA team, thank you so much for having us. We always love to be here and be with
Absolutely. Thank
your
you both for
crowd.
being here. Yes, thank you for your partnership, ongoing excellent partnership with Energy Cap. And we once again just want to thank everybody for participating and logging into our webinar today. As I mentioned prior, we'll have this up on our website within 24 hours and on our Vimeo channel. So feel free to check it out there, as well as some of the other opportunities that Tom and Daniela talked about today. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you for the next one. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate
Bye.
everybody. Have a great day.